Hello everybody. Today we are reading Toro Moon by Darby Carchut, Chapter 2. I don't know if you can tell, but I finally got my microphone to work on my headsets. I don't know why it wasn't working before, but now it's not going to sound so cluttered, hopefully. Dad! The scream rippled through my throat. The nearest Skinner leaped at Turk, teeth snapping and front paws clawing. It chomped down on Dad's right calf, then braced itself and yanked, trying to drag him out of the saddle into the waiting pack. Terror knifed at me. No, not my dad. I started to jump off. No, Matt, Elsid shouted. Stay with me. He jerked to one side. Out of habit, I squeezed my leg and held on. Cursing in a creative blend of English and Spanish, Dad flipped his weapons around and buried its butt and end into the Skinner's skull. It cracked like a pinata. Turk! The black planted his hind leg, and whirled in a circle, halfway around. The creature sailed off with another one of those bang claps. It vanished in midair. Screaming with fury, the stallion barreled into the others and sent them flying. He stomped on an unlucky one, his hoof snapping the monster's spine like a stick of wood. It twitched and jerked, clawing at the dirt. A few monsters later, it staggered to its feet, then shook its head and bared its teeth in a mocking grin, ready for another round. Out of nowhere, a Skinner lunged for Elsid's throat, almost running out from under the stallion's from from under me. The stallion spun away. The Skinner tumbled to the ground, then snarled and leaped again. Get away from him! I swung my mace, my muscles spasming from a combination of horror and panic. The weapon whistled through the air. Clean miss. Lips twitching in amusement, the creature danced around, circling us. The sickening reek of spoiled meat burned my nostrils and coated my tongue. I gagged, then spat. El Cid. No. El Cid! Dad sent another monster into oblivion with a wet crunch, then pointed his weapon. Go! Make for the gate! Hold tight, Matt. The stallion kicked the creature to one side, then catapulted into a gallop. I grabbed the saddle horn with my free hand, just in time to keep from being swerved up as a Skinner appetizer. Hitting full speed in 3 strides, he pounded across the valley, weaving around boulders and crashing through bushes. The aroma of crushed sage and chrysolite and creosote mingled with a sharp tang of horse sweat. The chuff of his breath and the creak of leather filled my ears. Ahead of us, the gate, a narrow corridor in the southern wall, promised safety. The last thing I wanted. I tugged at the reins. We've got to go back to help Dad. It was like trying to stop the Colorado River in its springtime flood. I braced my feet in the stirrups and pulled harder with a jerk of his head. Elsid yanked the reins from my hand. The leather burned across my palm. Giving up, I twisted around and forced myself to look. Even before I turned, I knew what I'd see. Turk riderless, my father sprawled on the ground, and a Skinner crouched over him, its teeth buried into his throat. Oh, please, not that. Not Dad, too. Sick with relief, I almost dropped my mace, eyes white rimmed with battle rage. Turk gained on us with every stride of its powerful legs. Dad rose low. Rode low in the saddle, mace at the ready and head turned, watching the pursuit. A tiny corner of my mind marveled that he hadn't lost his hat. Half hidden in Turk's dust, the 3 remaining Skinners raced after us, strings of venom and saliva flying from their open mouths. One creature dragged a hind leg that was mostly a splintered stick. Crunches, chunks of meat clung to it. Even as I watched, the leg grew back. The Skinner gave a yelp of delight and picked up its pace. With a surge, Turk caught us. I glanced over. My father's jaw was clenched and his lips were pressed in a thin line. How bad? I yelled. Did it? Matt, no matter what, Deb shouted. You stay on El Cid. I crouched lower, rocking forward and back in my rhythm with his stride. My ankles and knees flexed with each joint of the stallion's stride, working like shock absorbers. All the while, I forced myself to stay relaxed, my weapon at the ready, just the way Dad had taught me and Ben. This way, the way my father had taught him, and his brother and sister, and his father before that, generation after generation. all the way back to our legendary ancestors 4 centuries ago. Santiago del Toro had stepped off that freight and wadded ashore in the New World, a magic enhanced mace in one hand and his Andalusum war brother by his side, Spain in his wake and vow to keep. The thunder of hooves bounced off the wall in the bounced off the valley walls. Sorry about all the messing up on words. The echoes grew louder, or was it or was it my pulse thundering my ears? Ahead of us, at the top of the short incline, the mouth of the gate loomed. I could feel El Cid's ribs heaving as he pounded up the slope. Behind us, the Skinners yelled, eager to munch on man flesh or horse flesh or boy flesh. I thought of what would happen if these monsters caught me. What would their teeth do to me? What would it feel like to be eaten alive? Stop it. Don't think about it. Just ride. I leaned forward and stretched out along El Cid's neck, practically burying myself in his mane. Fear not, Matt, El Cid panted between words. No demon-sprawled Skinner has ever outrun an Andalusum. Man, I sure hope that wasn't just bragging on his part. I swore I felt the hot breath of the Skinners on my neck. We hit the opening to the corridor at full speed. 40 yards to safety. Blinded by the shadow, I clung to the horn. Sorry, if you can hear that, that's my dog. He has a cone, like a traffic cone, and it's tiny, and he's just playing with it. We hit the opening of the corridor at full speed, 40 yards to safety. Blinded by the shadow, I clung to the horn. Cool air chilled the sweat on my face as the towering walls whipped past me. El Cid stumbled. I gasped, certain he was going down. With a wrench, he caught his balance and flung himself back into the race. The howls of the Skinners bounced off the cliff walls. My stomach clenched. Were they gaining on us? I didn't want to check, because what if they were? The far opening seemed like a million miles away and never getting any closer. It felt like that we were running in place. Sunlight blasted my eyes. I blinked. When I could see again, open grassland stretched before me, green and golden, a blue sky. El Cid, Matt, Dad called from behind us. We are clear. Panting, I slumped in the saddle. El Cid slowed to a lope, then a trot, then dropped to a walk, blowing hard. Sweat darkened his hide. Oh man. I pressed my palm on his wet neck. Whoa, what a ride. My words exactly, he said. Turk eased down, matching El Cid's gait. He raised his tail. Eat this, zombie dogs. He let one rip. For a long minute, the whole world smelled like alfalfa. Could have been worse. Feeling braver, I twisted around and rested a hand on El Cid's haunch. The soaring cliffs of the maze reminded me of an enormous castle wall. It stretched for several miles in either direction. Shapes moved in the gate's shadow. Skinners. They milled around, pacing back and forth, howling in their frustration. Then they left. The darkness swallowed them up. Bummer it wasn't for real. Dad, out of habit, my gaze lifted to the top of the twin buttes, stony towers that stood like sentinels on either side of the gate. How do we know the wards are holding? Do you see any of those monstros following us home? An odd tone in his voice yanked my head around. I choked back my anxiety and looked at his leg. A dark wet patch marred the faded denim just below the knee. That its venom. I hated the way my voice quivered. It only got one fang into me. My boot stopped the other one. Good thing I wore my Tony Llamas, no? No, it wasn't a good thing. No, not one bit. Not one freaking bit. How sick can you get from one fang? Shouldn't we tie something around it to stop the venom from spreading? Could he die from one fang? He waved away my concern. The best thing is home and rest and the evening meal, and my youngest son waiting on me, hand and foot. He forced a grin, his pale face. El Cid snorted. I oughta gilled you, Turk. He panted as he walked along, showing off. Again, disobeying Javier's orders. Again, and failing to protect your rider. Turk bared his teeth. I didn't see you fighting. Dos. Dios? Dos. Dad said worryingly. Give it a rest, would you? The 2-mile ride back home took forever. The whole time, the shadow of the nearby mountains crept across the open prairie, inching closer to us, but not in a creepy way. The Sangre de Cristo Range was an old friend. It protected our ranch from the worst of the winter storms that roared in the west. Breathing harder than I liked, Elsid kept at a running walk, dragging his hooves through the grass and churning up dust and bits of dried vegetation. Turk stomped along beside him, lost in a mood, lost in a mood as black as his coat. Me? I swore I aged a year and a half. Even with the summer afternoon being just about perfect, the air filled with a scent of sage and horse, the green-yellow grass lit from the day, weary sun. All I could think about was getting Dad home. Halfway there, a new worry crawled into the saddle behind me. What was I supposed to do when I got home? I didn't know anything about skin venom. All I did know was that too much was lethal. How much? Sorry. How much was too lethal? A shot. I shot a peek at my father. He seemed okay, except for the way he slumped in the saddle, one hand resting on the horn, not typical of a man who always rode head up and heels down. Just my rotten apple luck that Ben was still gone. For the 100th time, I wish my brother was back already. For the millionth time, I wish my mother was still alive. I sighed in relief when the top of our barn peeked over the low hill we called the Buffalo's Hump. The house's chimney appeared a few minutes later. Under us, the horses lengthened their strides. Kirk stepped out in front and took the lead. Guess he was worried about Dad, too. I can feel you fretting right through the saddle, Elsid said, but you needn't. Javier's going to be fine. You're just saying that to make me feel better. No, I'm saying that because it's true. Have I ever lied to you, Mateo del Toro? Only about a bazillion times. Ah, a long silence. Well, only when it was for your own good. We rounded the hill. I relaxed even more at the sight of our home sweet home on the range. The ranch house and the barn sat tucked against the south side of the hump and faced each other across an open yard of dirt and gravel. The wooden sidings of both buildings were weathered to Cahankia. Sorry, I think that's how it's pronounced. Brown. Reaching the yard, I spotted a canvas duffel bag on the lowest porch step. I stared at it. At first, my head refused to process the meaning of the duffel. What was the bag doing? Oh, what's that bag doing? Oh, my heart kicked like a jackrabbit. I looked around, joy and nervous wrestling for dominance inside of me. Maybe now, I thought, it'll be different between them. Even a little change would be nice. Heck, I'm not greedy. I'll even take one less fight a day. Before I could point out the bag to Dad, I figured a figure appeared in the barn doorway. Whoa, said a familiar voice. You guys look like something even a Skinner wouldn't eat. Fingers fumbling, I looped my mace onto the saddle horn, then jumped. I hit the ground running, my boots slipping and crunching on the ground. Ben! Hey, Maddie, my brother sauntered out of the double doors, his grin mirroring mine. Ignoring the stupid nickname, I threw myself at him and hugged him, and then let go and stepped back. Man, am I glad you're here. Sick of doing all the chores? Dad's hurt, bit by a Skinner. Ben's smile disappeared. How bad? He hurried over to Turk's side, acknowledging Elsid on the way with a nod. He glanced at the injured leg, then peered up. Looks like I came home just in time, Pop. My brother knew our father hated that term, which was why he used it. Oh, we would have managed, Reuben. Ben stiffened at the use of his full name, which he hated. Dad's payback. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Really, guys? I wanted to kick them both right in the seats of their wranglers. The back stallion's head whipped around, big square teeth snapping all Rottweilerish. He just missed my brother's arm. Drop the wise guy routine and help your father. Nice to see you too, Turk. Ben offered a hand to Dad. Stomped on any kittens lately? Helping our father swing his bitten leg over the cantle. A worried expression flitted across my brother's face. My earlier anxiety bounced back into the red zone. Wincing from the movement, Dad took his time dismounting, easing his way onto the wounded leg with a sigh. He flexed his knee a few times, nodded, and ran a hand down his goatee. He studied my brother. You've grown, I guess, Ben shrugged. Listen, let's get you inside. A boy leaves. 2 months later, a young man returns. Ben looked away. Even so, I spied a flush of pride in his face. To me, he looked like a younger, leaner version of our father. both of them trim and athletic, their movements quick and sure, and both gifted with features that had earned Ben double, if not triple, looks from girls since he was my age, and still earned Dad sidelong glances over bright smiles from waitresses and store clerks. Did you hear from Hufferando? Huffando? Did you walk? Did you walk from Hufferano? Dad asked. We would have picked you up. I wanted to stretch my legs after that bus ride. Speaking of legs, Ben started to take his arm. Our father stopped him. The injury is not that bad, Dad. No, come give me your old man a hug first. Still taller by a few inches, he took Ben by the shoulders, kissed him soundly on the cheek, then wrapped his arms around him. My brother stiffened for a moment, then relaxed and hugged back, hard and fierce. Hey, Papa, Ben whispered over Dad's shoulders. It is a gift to have you home. Mijo? Mijo? Love swelled my chest. A big wad of it pushed a lump into my throat. Part of me itched to join them, wiggling in under one of Dad's arms. I shoved that thought away. Sheesh, I told myself. Get a grip. Movement behind me. Popcorn crunch of hooves on gravel. Then the rest of our little nut horse of the prairie family joined us. Sorry. My brother stepped out of Dad's embrace to face El Cid. Haha, Ben, the older stallion blew in delight. As your father said, a gift to have you and have the family back together again. Hey, El Cid. Ben bumped his forehead against the grays. Against the grays. No, against the grays. Then tugged on the white forelock. So what's happening in the maze? Turk pulled a rookie move. Well, I wish I could blame it on him. I must admit we were outnumbered. A surprise attack by a pack of Skinners. Ben blinked. Wait, what? Did you say a pack? Since when were there enough of those Skinners to form one? Anyway, I thought Skinners mostly work solo. His head swiveled from our father to me and back again. What's going on? Dad's brows knitted. The coffer must be compromised. Meaning what? I tried to keep my voice from squeaking. Failed. He paused, then spoke. Meaning more of them are escaping from their ancient prison. My heart froze. More Skinners? I tried to imagine fighting an even larger pack. All I could see were the gaping jaws of the one that had attacked me and El Cid. Oh boy. And more means trouble for us, El Cid. Those creatures are clever enough to use superior numbers to their advantage, such as today, when they sacrificed that first creature as a decoy. As long as the wards hold, we will deal with whatever is inside the maze. We always have. Dad stared into the distant mesa, one hand resting on the saddle. Then he shook his head and straightened with a grimace. But for now, he pointed his chin toward the barn. Mateo, barn duty. Then after supper, the five of us will talk. See if we can determine what's going on in El Labyrinto. And that is the end of chapter 2. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please say something in the comments. Thank you. Bye.